What in the world are you doing? And where did you get that cow?
I'm trying to get her to kick over the lantern, like in the Great Chicago Fire.
Are you trying to impress today's guest, Dwight Turner, because he appeared on Chicago Fire? You do realize that the Great Chicago Fire and the TV show, Chicago Fire, are two different things, don't you?
Of course I do. Now I do. We have plenty of milk in the office fridge.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, please don't disturb the yak.
Coming to you from Sherpa Chalet in beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia, it's time for entertainment interviews in the Sherpa screening room. Grab an aisle seat and a bucket of popcorn, but don't crunch too loud or you'll miss the show. Now, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels, and welcome to another day of Hollywood Week here in the Sherpa screening room with me, Joe Rogan. No, it's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Stop that. I know they get us confused all the time. No, they don't. I was lying. Anyway, we're here for another interview with another actor. He is originally from Kentucky. He's been on the stage, on TV, in movies, and has done voiceover work as well. He's a guy named Dwight Turner. Super nice guy, really down to earth. Had a lot of fun talking to him. And I think you're going to enjoy the interview that I had with him. And of course, him being from Kentucky, we talked about the first thing that actors from Kentucky would be talking about, the Kentucky Derby. I don't know about I just made that up. Anyway, have a listen to the conversation. I'm sure you will enjoy it. So why don't we head on down to the conference room at the Sherpa Chalet to hear my conversation with Mr. Dwight Turner. Hello, Rebels. We are here in the Sherpa screening room, and the man with a perfectly decorated room behind him on Skype. His name is Mr. Dwight Turner. He's done voiceovers, he's done commercials, he's done television, he's done movies, and we're going to have some fun with him, and we'll find a little bit about him. And he is right now in his great home of Kentucky. Is that what's my old Kentucky home, right? Is that the name of the song?
That is a famous song for Kentucky. Yes, My Old Kentucky Home, which is played at the beginning of the Kentucky Derby every year, which, by the way, the Kentucky Derby has been, because of the whole pandemic situation, postponed until the fall, but they are evidently going to run it in the fall.
Did you ever go?
I have gone. I've gone twice, and I want to go again now that I'm back in this part of the United States. By the way, thank you for having me on the show.
Hi.
There are two experiences with going to the Kentucky Derby. One is the grandstand or the seats, and the other is the infield. And they are two completely different experiences, and I have done both. So back when I was in college, I did the infield, which is more of like a big party in the middle. A while later, I've done the seats, which I find to be a completely different experience, both fun in their various ways. But there's nothing else quite like the Derby.
Okay, now you live in California normally, right?
Well, so I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up in a very small town called Hazard, Kentucky. Once I finished school and got my degree, which was in communications with a radio television emphasis, I moved out to California and lived out there the entire time until recent years when my mom has been going through health issues. So I moved back. And so I am in Kentucky now, but I do travel back and forth a lot between the West Coast and also up to New York. And well, since I've been in this part of the country, I mean, I've worked in LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Raleigh, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Kansas. So I do a lot of traveling, but honestly do not mind it because I love to travel. I always have. I've been lucky. I've been to 23 countries in every state in the U.S. except for two.
So, and you've been to Europe and as well, in
Oh,
Asia?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you do this all for acting, or you just because you just so love to travel, or is it a little
Well,
bit of both?
it depends. It's a little bit of both, but I love to travel for work. I love to travel for fun, and I just it's probably part of why I became an actor. I love people, and I love to travel to different areas and see what the people are like, experience the culture, experience the food, experience the historic sites. It's all fascinating.
Do you have a favorite place that you've been to apart from Kentucky, or?
I wouldn't say favorite. I have favorites. I love Italy, France. I love Sweden and Denmark. I have a lot of ancestry from Denmark, so it's always fascinating to go there. Spain, France. And, and then in the US, I mean, there are so many fascinating areas of this country. It's such a wide and vast country. And California itself, has so much traveling between the various areas of California. It's there's so many beautiful areas. I wish more people would just get out and go and see all of these places because it really is an eye-opening experience. And I imagine that part of the reason that I love to travel so much is because when I was a child, I didn't. I grew up in a very small, isolated community in the mountains of southeastern Kentucky. It was a beautiful way to grow up, but it did not prepare me for the world.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, when you're at a different part of the country or around the world, is there anything specific that you miss about Kentucky? Like maybe like a special burger place or a drink that.
Oh no, that's not the case at all. Because when I travel, I never want to, I will never go to a fast food restaurant like Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that, in another part of the world, because I want to experience what's there. So I will usually try to find well rated restaurants that specialize in local fare and try that. And I'm pretty lucky for the most part. I mean, it's always taking a chance. You never know if you're going to love the food, but it's always an interesting experience. And to me, it goes with the territory of traveling and experiencing that area.
Sure. Taking the cuisine and the sights and
Absolutely.
make a day of it, right? Let's start with the beginning from you. Now, your first exposure to acting, you were 8 years old and you were in a church play?
Oh my gosh, where did you find that out? You've done your research.
I have my sources, Dwight. I have video.
Gosh, wow. No, I don't think there was video. Yeah, well, it goes back even a little bit farther than that because I remember being a young kid and watching a variety show with my dad on television and asking him how much I had to pay to do that because it seemed like it was so much fun. And he explained to me that no, they get paid. And I was like, oh. And then yes, I did a church play when I was a kid, and I loved it. And I think at that point I had the acting bug, and I continued to do a series of local non-professional shows or stage shows, and did not actually work professionally until I moved to LA. And so I went to college. I got my degree in communications with a radio television emphasis. I interned with CBS, but the whole time I knew that I wanted to be an actor. I knew I didn't know how I was going to achieve it, but I just knew that was what I wanted to do. And as soon as I finished college, the very next month, I moved out to LA. It was culture shock, to say the least. And keep in mind, even though I'd gotten rid of my accent pretty much by that point, I grew up talking like this. I had a big O accent. I started working on it on my own because I knew that if I wanted to pursue acting, that I needed to do that. Otherwise, I would be stereotyped into only certain roles. So I moved out to LA with a fellow graduate who lasted a month, even though we had agreed we'd stay a year. He lasted a month and then moved back to Kentucky. And so here I was, out there not knowing anyone and very naive about the industry. I ended up moving to a guest house up in the Hollywood Hills with a fantastic view of LA. I could see all the way from downtown to the ocean. And Bruce Springsteen lived 2 doors away. That was a fascinating experience because every once in a while he would have his windows open. I could hear him practicing. And so I started studying with Nina Foch. She taught me some really good acting skills right off the bat. And one of those students in her class had a birthday party. And I went to his birthday party. And this is where I really lucked out. I went to his birthday party and a guy came up to me and said, "Hey, are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes." And he, keep in mind, I had not acted professionally at that point, but I said yes. And he said, "I'm your friend's agent. Here's my card. Come see me this Wednesday. Give me a call. I want you to come see me this Wednesday, and I'm going to see if I can get you some work." So I gave him a call. We said at the time I went to see him that Wednesday. He sent me on my first ever professional audition that Friday, and I booked it. And it was for a national commercial. And I was instantly Taft-Hartley'd into SAG. And so from my very first audition ever, I ended up booking a national commercial, which paid a really good amount of money back then. And I was union. So that helped me get off to a good start. And I remembered at the time thinking, wow, this is all so easy. And then, of course, I realized after a little while, well, that's not necessarily the case. It's being an actor is a bit like riding a roller coaster, but if you love it, it's all worthwhile.
Do you remember your first professional acting job? What role you played?
Well, that was it.
I mean, apart from like a TV series or a movie or anything like that. Do you remember?
Oh, apart from that commercial, yes. Let's see. Oh my gosh, it goes way back there. There was so I started working with the schools because I was told, hey, USC, which is very true, is one of the best film schools in the world. Keep in mind, this was before everything went to internet. And so I was told, they have a board at USC, and you can go and you can look to see what projects are filming and send in your headshot resume. So I did that, and I've ended up I've done quite a number of projects for USC before I started working in bigger things like television and film. And I did a project for them called Back Cuts, and I think that was probably one of the first things that I did that I was acting in. I was so naive. I didn't know what the terminology was. I didn't know what hitting your mark and all that stuff. Like I had to learn that rather quickly. And I just remember being so nervous and so scared when we filmed that because of my unfamiliarity with the process. But looking back on it, looking back on that footage, I felt like I did a good job for not knowing what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And funny enough, now that I'm thinking about it, I never really thought about this until just now. I played a cop, and I've gone on years later to play all of these lead detective roles and police roles. And so, yeah, I didn't make that connection until just now.
That was going to be one of my questions. You played a lot of cops and detectives. I know on Discovery ID as well, and a lot of doctors too.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about doing that when you were a kid? Like you wanted to be a cop or a doctor? You just now I get to be one.
No, but I'm sure my mom wanted me to be a doctor in real life. But no, and it's funny because I asked friends about, and listen, I love playing those roles. And evidently I do a good job because they keep hiring me for those roles. But it was never planned. It just kind of happened. And I did the first one that I did, I believe, professionally. First professional role like that I did was for a show called The Trade, which filmed in a studio in downtown LA. And it's one of those situations where you do one thing and people like it, and then you're doing another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. But I have to tell you, I've asked friends of mine who've known me for many years, and I'm like, did you think that I would be playing like all of these like lead detective roles? And they're like, no.
Well, the joke's on you, right?
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it. And yeah, I look forward to playing more of those roles.
As you're telling me this story about playing lead detectives, I'm wondering, like, if maybe one day you get pulled over for speeding and like the cop pulls up and goes, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know it was you." We worked together.
Oh my gosh, there are two stories for that. One is so when I did, for instance, Murder Comes to Town, and that was filmed in Tennessee, and I actually worked with two actual Tennessee police officers. And real police officers who trained me in various ways, like the handcuffs, the gun, frisking, the stop, and all of that. And which was beneficial because I'll tell you, if you do something and you don't do it right, people are going to write and email you about it. You're going to hear about it. So it's good that they do try to have people consulting on these projects to make sure things are done correctly. And a little tidbit, those two police officers actually played background in the episode. So when you watch that episode, you'll see two actual Tennessee police officers in the background. And another interesting tidbit is, so when I when I auditioned for Chicago Fire, I was driving back and I was driving through Indiana, and I was all excited because I thought that I booked the show as Dr. Mayberry. And I was on the phone with a friend of mine telling her about it and probably not paying as much attention as I should have. And I got pulled over. And so when he came up to the window and he said, "Sir, I've been following you for 7 miles and you looked like you were speeding and at times," because it was a construction zone, even though they were not doing construction at the moment. And so I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "I just auditioned for Chicago Fire and, was all excited. And I was on the phone telling my friend about it." And he said, "You did what?" And I said, I just auditioned for Chicago Fire and I think I booked the show. And so anyway, he was like, "That's my favorite show." So what ended up happening was he took my license, he ran everything, and I got a warning, which I was very relieved about. Things like that certainly do not happen all the time, but I was happy that I didn't get a big ticket that day. And I imagine he was probably watching the show at some point and said, "That's him. He was telling the truth. He wasn't lying." So a little interesting experience there.
I may use that excuse in the future, Dwight. But I don't know if they're going to believe Chicago Fire. I'll have to come up with something else.
I know.
So when you worked on Chicago Fire as Dr. Mayberry, what's it like working on a show with that much buzz? I know the whole Wednesday night thing, I guess, here in the States about the Chicago shows. Do you feel like you're part of something really larger than you?
Yeah. Well, anytime you're working on a show of that caliber, absolutely. Now, I will tell you that coming from LA, I did not know quite what to expect because, it's Chicago. But I was very pleasantly surprised. I mean, everybody knew exactly what they were doing. It was like clockwork, and they were so on top of everything. It made it a really fantastic experience and a very enjoyable experience that I would love to do more with. I would love to work on more of the Chicago shows. So Claire Simon, if you're listening, Claire's the casting director for a lot of those Chicago shows.
Paging Dr. Mayberry. Paging Dr. Mayberry.
Well, unfortunately, I was Otis's doctor, and Otis died. So now he didn't die under my care, but I actually was the one who let him go back to being a fireman. But you just made me think about something that actually had happened last year, but I didn't find out about it until probably about 3 weeks ago. After Otis passed away on the show, Chicago Fire did a 1.5-minute video of Otis's best moments, and one of his moments with Dr. Mayberry was in there. That made me.
You got to be a flashback.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk to you a little bit about your movie career, and I know you had some really interesting roles, and you worked in interesting situations. And you did a movie called Out Sorcery that debuted in Comic-Con.
Yeah. Now this, you never know what's going to happen, what might happen with some of these projects. And this is one of the most amazing and unexpected points in my career because, I've done a lot of projects with USC, University of Southern California, one of the best film schools out there, Loyola, Chapman, UCLA. And so I did this film with CSUN, which is Cal State Northridge. They have a good film program, but it's not known like on the same level as USC, for instance. And this was with a group of undergrad students. And Out Sorcery is about a sorcerer that gets outsourced. And I play his mean boss who outsources him. So we did this film. And the next thing you know, it goes to Comic-Con. It premiered at Comic-Con. We did a panel at Comic-Con, and it was nominated Best Humor Film in 2011. That was the year. For me, it was a completely fascinating experience because I had never been to Comic-Con, and I didn't know a whole lot about it. So they VIP'd me for the entire week. I went to all the parties. It was a whirlwind. It just goes to show that you never know what might happen with one of these projects. I did another project called The Gestapo versus Granny, and that ended up being a finalist for Project Greenlight with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and HBO. And once again, that was a completely unexpected thing. You just never know.
And you also got to work with Nick Turturro and Talia Shire in The Deported.
Yes, and that was a fun experience. Talia, I did not know I was going to be working with until the day of. And the way I knew I was working with Nick, but I'm sitting there in hair and makeup, and there's this lady sitting next to me. They're finishing up her hair. She's really nice, and we're having pleasant conversation. And the guy finishes her hair, and he reaches down and pulls out these 2 DVDs, and he hands them to her, and he says, "Would you mind?" And I just loved you in both of these. Just like, you're so fantastic. And she's like, "Well, of course." So she starts signing them, and I'm looking, and it's like Rocky and I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Talia Shire." So and she ended up being the absolute nicest person. I really enjoyed working with her.
You never had the temptation to go, "You Adrian"?
No, because I figure she's heard that so many times. She probably wants to punch someone when they do it. So I did, and punch someone, especially coming from the Rocky film. So I did. I held back.
You did a movie called The Spirit of 76, and you played a real person, and you were portraying a real person. Stuart Spencer.
Yes, and that certainly had a political sway to it. Interesting little thing about that is it was filmed, and you can't even really tell from watching the film, but it was filmed out in this magnificent house in Malibu that looked out towards the ocean. And I just remember thinking, I've had the opportunity to film in some great locations. And that was one in particular. Yeah, it's interesting, the whole political thing. So I then had a couple of things happen this year that have never happened before. And one is ending up in a musical. and it has a political sway to it. It's called Day at the White House, and it's the most fascinating thing because I've never done a musical. I can certainly sing. I am not trained in the way that Broadway singers are trained, and I am not a big reader of music. But I was asked to audition for this, and I turned it down at first. And then I was asked to audition again, and I did, and I booked the lead male romantic role. So here I am, a person who has never done a musical before, and I'm in a lead role for this musical.
That's pretty incredible.
Well, it's an amazing experience, and I just want to do an incredibly top-notch professional job. And but I will say that it has been a bit interesting because we have not been able to rehearse in person because of the pandemic. Now we were able to have one rehearsal recently, and hopefully we're going to have more soon. What's going to happen with that show, though, because we can't have audiences, is we're going to do a live cast album, and then we're going to do a live, I'm sorry, not a live cast album, a cast album. Then we're going to do a live radio broadcast of the show. And then hopefully eventually we'll be able to have audiences back and be able to put the show up. And it'd be nice if it were able to eventually go to New York, which is where the composer is from. He currently has a show running off Broadway. Well, not at the moment because there are no audiences at the moment, but he has a show off Broadway. And then the writer-director is award-winning himself. And so they have some weight behind the show.
That's interesting that you're doing a radio show of a musical, especially, I mean, when you think probably back to the 30s, and there was no TV or anything like that. Everybody was gathered around the radio, and here you are doing something that you probably could have maybe streamed, but you're doing it, you're kind of going old school with it.
Yeah. And I think that was the idea once this whole pandemic thing fell into place. I mean, it's certainly an interesting situation, and it's definitely affected me. The year started off really well, and I had six projects, and everything just on hold or canceled. And my first project was canceled March 21st, and that was another first for me. It was an interesting situation where I've done lifestyle modeling for products. That's, for people that don't know, that's print work for companies and products. But I've never been a runway model. That's a completely different thing. And I was asked to audition for a big runway show. I did, and was booked on that show. It was going to happen March 21st. That was the first thing that I had that was canceled because of COVID. And I remember feeling very frustrated at the time. But now, looking back on it, it's like everything else was canceled or postponed as well. And that was just the beginning of it.
Yeah. I guess you're not alone with projects coming to a dead halt right now.
No, not alone at all. And listen, it's not just me. It's not just my industry. It's so many people in industries around the world. I mean, a lot of people who are in a lot worse situation than I am. So, and let's just hope that sooner rather than later, we can get back to living our lives again like we'd like to. Because for me, I truly love what I do. I truly love acting. And so to be in this period where you can't do it, or it's very difficult to do it, it has not been fun for me. Because keep in mind, I'm a person who has actually canceled vacations because I booked a project. And to me, it was more fun to go work on the project than it was to go on the vacation. So that gives you an idea of how much I love what I do. So to be in this period where we can't really work like we did, it's frustrating.
There was one other question that I wanted to ask. You did a show called Bear Tours. It ended up on Japanese TV.
Yes. Now this was a very interesting project one of the main character in the show, he had an appearance on The Office. Remember the series The Office? And so he started this show, and there were a lot of wonderful Japanese actors involved in this, and it was a very interesting experience for me because I don't speak Japanese. We filmed a season of that. I have to say, it was one of the most fascinating experiences. There are a number of fascinating experiences in my career, but this one was particularly fascinating just because of the cultural differences that made it both a lot of fun and at times challenging, but very enjoyable. And I would love to work with them again. It did go to Japanese television. So it started out here. It was picked up by Japanese TV and was airing there. And they actually even, oh my gosh, and it's interesting to watch it. They even did like subtitles and then parts of it in Japanese for the Japanese audience.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a unique kind of thing. You never knew, if you end up in Tokyo, it's like, wait a minute, I know you, right?
Exactly. And oh my gosh, that can happen at the most interesting times. Of course, I get recognized for being on Chicago Fire from time to time. And it's interesting what people recognize me for, or what I, if I'm out and about. So Chicago Fire is a big one. And another one was 1,000 Ways to Die, which has such a cult following. I had no idea when I was hired for that show. Oh, and by the way, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to tell this, but I will. When I auditioned for that show, I honestly I was not happy with my audition. I didn't like what I did. And I remember calling a friend when I got to the car and saying, well, I definitely didn't book that. And then I booked it. And so the show was fun. It was a fun show to do. But I found out after I did the show, like, what a following that it has. And I will be out and about and people will recognize me from 1,000 Ways to Die, which I did years ago.
It was in your death was like in the 300s, and you put the metal pellets into your smoothie and drank it. I think that was how your character ended up dying.
But not on purpose. And keep in mind, these are all based on true stories.
Mm-hmm.
All based on true stories. And so I played Lenny, and Lenny was running a Ponzi scheme. In the feds get tipped on this. They're coming to raid his office. He gets tipped on them coming to raid his office. So he gets his secretary, and they start trying to shred all the evidence. So they're like putting all these papers through the paper shredder. And when he would get nervous, he would drink these boba drinks, which have the little boba balls in them. Well, he had one of those buckyball sculptures on his desk, which are those little metallic ball sculptures that cling together. And he got mad at one point, threw it on the desk, and 2 of those little metal balls went into his boba drink. And he drank them like they were little boba balls. He didn't realize it. He would have been okay if it had been 1. But being 2, the magnetics of it, well, it didn't work out for him very well inside.
Kaboom.
Kaboom. Yes.
Ponzi come to an end.
Exactly.
Okay. So, Dwight, are you ready for Totally Random Questions, otherwise known as the TRQ?
Let's hit it.
Totally random questions. Totally random questions.
I had to warn him before we did this. Just like, oh no, not the Totally Random Question. Now, you've done the voiceover as Green Lantern for Six Flags.
Six Flags. Mm-hmm.
All right. What would you want your superpower to be if you could have one?
Oh my gosh. I think I would want my superpower to be able to fly.
I like it.
Yeah.
It'll make traveling easier for you too.
Well, exactly. And that probably comes from years of living in LA, where on a daily basis, I wish, gosh, if I could just fly above all this horrible traffic. Oh, yes. Yes.
All right, and you also did voiceovers for WebMD. Is that correct?
Yes. That's
Yeah. All right.
correct.
So I'm going to put you to work here. If you could warn the viewers of the possible side effects of listening to this podcast with your WebMD voice.
Be aware that the Sherpa screening room could have possible unintended side effects. Listen with caution and at your own. At your own. I didn't want to make it too dreary. At your.
Oh, it would have been okay. I wouldn't have been offended. Don't worry. I thought you were saying like side effects include nausea.
No, no. No, I'm actually I enjoy your interview style, so I would give you actually a passing grade from the doctor.
And I know you do a lot of different accents. Do you have like a favorite accent that you like to do that maybe you just kind of break into every once in a while?
Well, I mean, I would say that it has to be the one that I only got to use for the very first time last year in my entire career. And that's the one that I grew up with because I grew up talking like this until I was about 12 years old. And then I kind of, over a period of time, got rid of it. But I mean, I seriously, I grew up talking like this as a kid. This is it. And, and believe it or not, I never got to use that the whole time. Every single time my entire career, when I would audition for a role that used it, I never booked it. Well, yeah. And then finally, last year, I booked a series where I got to use it over 9 episodes of that series. So that was a lot of fun for me. But you know what? It'd been so long since I've been using it that I had to actually think about it when I was doing it.
Well, now that you're back home, do you find yourself slipping into your Kentucky voice or?
Oh, sure, a bit, but not completely. So, when I spend time in LA, of course, it's everyone around you is speaking a certain way, and you sort of fall into that and pick it up. Back here in Kentucky, yes, everyone is speaking with a bit of an accent. Now, where I am now is near Louisville, Kentucky, so the accent is not as thick as it is in southeastern Kentucky. But you cannot help but pick it up and fall into it a bit when it's around you all the time. And that's part of the fun of it.
I know you said there were a couple of things that you can't discuss because we're just kind of waiting for things. Are there any projects that we should keep an eye open for you?
Yes, there are. So The Pact is the series that I worked on last year, and that's going to be coming out supposedly this fall. And then the musical is called A Day at the White House that I'm in rehearsals for. And so stay tuned on that. It'll be fantastic when audiences can come back and we can put that up. I think I look forward to that. The series, which I signed an NDA for, I cannot talk about the details of that. But what I can say is that it stars a very well-known star of a couple of other series. If you go on to IMDB, so imdb.me/Dwight Turner. That's my IMDb page. And I'm listed on there as rumored for that series. So if you do a little detective work, you can probably figure it out. And there's a film that's supposed to come out in the California deserts that has been postponed because of the pandemic. Would love to see that go forward. And then the runway show may go forward in the fall. We'll see. There's been some talk about it. And then there's another project that I was actually just, the producer of that project is actually getting ready to release another film that he did. And I was just talking to him about moving forward at some point with a feature film version of a project that I did a teaser for last year. And so we'll see if that goes forward. But a very interesting thing was an actress that, sometimes you think like, wow, the synchronicity, or what are the chances of that happening? So the actress that I worked with on that teaser for that project, I saw just 2 random points recently, just like the chances were 1 in a million. And it happened within the same week. So that was very interesting. We laughed about it and said, maybe this is a sign that the project will go forward. And then I ended up talking to the producer. So all of that just completely random.
All right, so we've been talking to Mr. Dwight Turner, and I'm sure your mom is really proud of you being a good son and taking care of her and everything like that. And we wish all the best for her.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I lucked out. She's a sweet apple pie mom, and I'm happy to I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. So I'm happy to do everything I can for her. And if people want to find out more about me, they can go to dwightturner.com. They can also reach out and contact me through the website there. And thank you again for having me on the show today. This was fun.
Yes, definitely check out the website because you can see everything that Dwight's done so far, and even some video clips of the things that you've been in as well. So people will get an idea of the type of roles that you play.
Thanks. I try to vary them. You can probably see from those clips. I do both drama and comedy, and I try to do different things all the time. Although I've landed into that lineup of detectives and doctors, but I still try to vary my work. I have fun with that.
Yeah, I'm sure whatever you're going to do, it's going to be great. And thanks a lot for coming by.
Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming down to the Sherpa Screening Room, and a special thanks to Mr. Dwight Turner, our guest for today. And when some of his projects do come out after all this pesky little coronavirus stuff, I'll let you know about that, okay? We'll be in touch with Dwight. And maybe he can actually come back on the show and discuss it a little bit more in depth. Hey, are you a rebel of the Sherpalution? A rebel of the Sherpalution. You get to rebel against, something, I don't know. If you aren't, you can listen to this show on your favorite podcast app, or you can go to my website, Sherpalution.com. And Sherpalution's a good word to know, especially if you want to follow this show on social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, keyword Sherpalution. It's just that easy. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and don't forget, there's a whole bunch of shows this week through Friday if you are listening through real time, and lots of good stuff coming up. So make sure you listen, okay, Rebels? That's how you become a rebel of the Sherpalution. And speaking of rebels of the Sherpalution, one of my favorite rebels, the hardest working man in show business, Mr. Bruce, if you could please show everyone to the door. And by the way, I've had a special star on the Walk of Fame on Mount Podcastia made just for you, Mr. Bruce. You can stand on it, but just don't take a left because there's a cliff on that side of it. So be very, very careful. Hey, safety first, See you guys tomorrow. Bye. Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. I'm Mr. Bruce, and this has been a Sherpa-Lu Studios production. Viva la Sherpalution!